Listen to me carefully right now, because this is not motivation, this is not entertainment, and this is not something you casually listen to while doing something else. This is a moment of truth, and moments of truth do not knock politely. They arrive unannounced, and they demand something from you. They demand honesty, they demand awareness, and they demand that you finally stop lying to yourself about why your life looks the way it does, because deep down you already know the answer. You have known it for a long time, but you have avoided it because it is uncomfortable and confronting and painful and yet necessary. Because the truth is, your life is not stuck because of a lack of opportunity. It is not stuck because of your past. It is not stuck because of other people or bad luck or timing. Your life is stuck because at some point you accepted a version of yourself that was smaller than what you were capable of becoming. And you called it realistic. You called it being mature. You called it being patient. But in reality, it was fear dressed up as logic and comfort, pretending to be safety. And every day since then, you have been living inside that decision, repeating the same patterns, waking up with the same thoughts, reacting with the same emotions, and wondering quietly why nothing ever changes, while secretly hoping something external will come along and rescue you from the responsibility of becoming who you know you should be. But let me tell you something that most people never want to hear. Nothing changes until you do. And nothing improves until you raise the standard of what you are willing to tolerate, because the life you are living right now is a direct reflection of the standards you have accepted, not your dreams, not your intentions, not your potential, but your standards, the behaviors you allow, the excuses you repeat, the thoughts you entertain, and the commitments you avoid. And the most dangerous place a human being can live is not poverty or failure or rejection. The most dangerous place is comfort without fulfillment, because when you are uncomfortable, you look for answers. But when you are comfortable, you settle. And when you settle, you slowly disconnect from the part of you that was meant for more, and you start convincing yourself that this is just how life is supposed to be, that everyone feels this tired, this unmotivated, this empty, this disconnected, and you numb yourself with distractions, scrolling noise routines, habits, relationships, anything that keeps you from having to sit alone with the question that scares you the most, which is, what if I am wasting my life? And what makes this moment different is that right now you feel it again, that pressure in your chest, that quiet voice that will not go away, the one that says, there is more for you than this, more strength, more discipline, more impact, more growth, more life. And you can ignore it like you have before, but understand this, every time you ignore it, it gets louder. Every time you suppress it, it finds another way to show up as frustration, anger, sadness, fatigue, boredom, anxiety, because that voice is not trying to hurt you, it is trying to wake you up. And the reason it feels uncomfortable is because growth always demands the death of an old identity. And your mind will fight that death with everything it has, because your mind is wired for survival, not greatness. It wants familiarity, not fulfillment. It wants certainty, not possibility. And so it will remind you of your past failures. It will show you reasons why now is not the right time. It will replay memories of embarrassment, rejection, disappointment, and say, see, this is why you should stay where you are safe, where you are known, where you do not have to risk being judged or failing again. But what it will never tell you is the cost of staying, the cost of waking up 10 years from now with regret, the cost of watching others live boldly while you explain why you could not, the cost of knowing that you had the chance to become more and you chose comfort. Instead, that cost is far heavier than the pain of discipline or the fear of change, because discipline hurts temporarily, but regret lasts forever. And the truth is, you are not afraid of failure. You are afraid of what success would require from you. You are afraid of the version of yourself you would have to let go, the relationships that would no longer fit, the habits that would no longer be acceptable, the excuses that would no longer work, because if you truly stepped into your potential, you would no longer be able to blame anyone else. And responsibility terrifies people who have lived too long in comfort, but responsibility is also the doorway to freedom, because the moment you accept that your life is your responsibility, you take back your power, and power is not loud, it is not aggressive, it is not dramatic. Power is a quiet internal certainty that says, no matter what happens, I will respond with strength, I will adapt, I will learn, I will grow, and I will not quit on myself anymore. And this is where your story actually begins. Not when things get easy, not when motivation magically appears, but when you make a decision to stop abandoning yourself, because that is what has been happening. You have been leaving yourself behind every time you chose short-term relief over long-term growth, every time you said tomorrow instead of today, every time you knew what you needed to do and talked yourself out of it. And the pain you feel is not because you are broken, it is because you are out of alignment with who you are meant to be. And alignment requires courage, The courage to look at your life honestly and say, this is on me. The courage to admit that some of your beliefs are outdated, some of your habits are destructive, and some of your relationships are holding you in the past. You have outgrown, and the courage to understand that nobody is coming to save you because you do not need saving. You need awakening. You need to remember who you were before fear taught you to play small, before disappointment taught you to lower your expectations, before failure taught you to doubt yourself, because that person is still there, buried under layers of conditioning, waiting for you to choose them again. And choice is the most powerful force in the human experience, because one decision made with absolute certainty can change the trajectory of your entire life. Not tomorrow, not next year, but starting now. And the reason most people never experience transformation is not because they do not know what to do it, is because they do not decide who they are going to be, and identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will try. If you see yourself as someone who hopes, you will hope. But if you see yourself as someone who commits, you will find a way. And this is the moment where you stop asking how and start deciding who, because how will show up once the decision is made. And right now, your only job is not to have it all figured out. Your only job is to tell the truth to yourself about where you are and where you refuse to stay anymore, because clarity creates power. And when you finally see the pattern clearly, the procrastination, the self-doubt, the inconsistency, the fear of judgment, the addiction to comfort, you stop judging yourself and start changing yourself. And change does not happen through inspiration alone. It happens through standards, through deciding that certain behaviors are no longer acceptable, that certain excuses no longer get airtime, that certain versions of you are no longer allowed to run your life. And this is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming honest. It is about saying, I will no longer negotiate with the part of me that wants to stay small, and I will no longer betray the part of me that knows I am capable of more. And that decision, when made with enough emotional intensity, becomes a line in the sand. And once that line is drawn, you do not cross it anymore, because the future version of you is watching right now. And one day they will look back at T, exact moment, as the turning point. The moment everything shifted, not because the world changed, but because you did. And this is only the beginning. Because once you wake up, you cannot go back to sleep. And once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. And from this moment forward, your life will start asking more of you, but it will also give you more of your strength. You did not know you had resilience. You did not know you could access and confidence that comes not from words, but from action. And this is the moment where you stop waiting and start becoming, because comfort has cost you enough. And the time for excuses is over, and the time for transformation has begun. What happens next after the wake-up call is not confidence, not clarity, not instant motivation, but conflict. Because the moment you decide to change, the old version of you does not disappear quietly, it fights back. And this is where most people get confused, because they think something is wrong when resistance shows up. But resistance is proof that you are moving in the right direction, because the part of you that was built for comfort is now under threat. And it will do everything it can to survive. It will bring up doubt, exhaustion, impatience, memories of past failures. It will magnify small setbacks and turn them into reasons to stop. And it will whisper the most dangerous lie of all. Maybe this is not for you. Maybe you are asking for too much. Maybe you should slow down. Maybe you should wait. And that voice feels convincing because it sounds like your own thoughts. But understand this clearly, that voice is not wisdom. It is fear trying to protect an identity that no longer serves you. And this is the inner war, the battle between who you have been and who you are becoming. And there is no neutral ground. You are either feeding the future or feeding the past. And the reason this war feels exhausting is because for the first time, you are no longer asleep. You are no longer operating on autopilot. You are conscious, and consciousness requires energy, discipline, awareness, and responsibility. And this is where emotions become your greatest obstacle, because emotions are temporary, but the decisions you make under their influence can shape your entire life. And most people live as emotional reactors. They act when they feel like it. They stop when it gets uncomfortable. They wait for motivation to show up like a signal before they move. But champions are not driven by emotion. They are driven by identity. They move because this is who I am, not because I feel inspired today. And the truth is, motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. But discipline is a decision you renew daily. And discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect. It is saying, I will do what needs to be done even when my mind resists, even when my body complains, even when no one is watching, because every disciplined action casts a vote for the person you are becoming. And every excuse reinforces the person you are trying to leave behind. And this is where people quit, not because the goal is impossible, but because they are unwilling to feel uncomfortable for long enough to transform. And let me be clear, growth is not glamorous. It is lonely, repetitive, boring, and painful. At times there are days where you will feel strong and days where you will feel like nothing is working, days where you will question your progress, your decision, and yourself. And this is where emotional maturity is forged, because emotional maturity is the ability to act in alignment with your values, not your moods. And if you only show up when it feels good, you will never rise above average, because average lives at the mercy of feelings. But greatness is built in moments where you do not feel like continuing, and you do it anyway. And this is where pain enters the story. And pain is unavoidable pain from discipline or pain from regret. And you get to choose which one you carry, because discipline hurts. Now regret hurts later. Discipline is temporary, regret is permanent. And the pain you feel when you push yourself is not damage, it is expansion. It is the signal that you are stretching beyond who you were, and your nervous system is learning a new standard. And this is why the body resists change, because the body wants efficiency, not excellence. It wants to conserve energy, but excellence requires demand, and demand creates pressure, and pressure reveals character. And right now, pressure is revealing the habits you need to outgrow, the excuses you need to release, and the beliefs you need to challenge. And here's the truth. Most people never hear you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards, and standards are not what you say they are what you do when no one is forcing you. And this is where your standards are being tested, not in big dramatic moments, but in small daily decisions, whether you follow through or delay, whether you stay consistent or disappear, whether you confront discomfort or avoid it. And the inner war is fought in these micro moments, these quiet choices that no one applauds but shape everything. And understand this, your mind will try to pull you back to what is familiar, not because it is good, but because it is known. And humans mistake familiarity for safety, but familiar pain is still pain. And unfamiliar growth still leads to freedom. And this is where courage is required, not the courage to start, but the courage to continue. When novelty fades, when results are slow, when no one notices. And this is where many people secretly hope for permission to quit. They look for signs that maybe this is not meant to work. But what they are really looking for is relief from discomfort. And relief is seductive because it feels good immediately, but it steals the future quietly. And the reason people sabotage progress right before a breakthrough is because their identity has not caught up with their behavior yet. And success threatens the old self, and when identity is challenged, anxiety appears, and the solution is not to stop, it is to reinforce identity, to remind yourself daily, this is who I am becoming, and this is what it requires, and yes, it is hard, and yes, it is uncomfortable, and yes, I am tired, but I am not turning back, because I know what happens if I do, and this is where you learn to separate yourself from your thoughts, because not every thought deserves belief, not every emotion deserves obedience. You are not your fear, you are not your doubt. You are the one who observes them and chooses anyway, and power is born the moment you realize you can feel discomfort and still act with intention. And this is how resilience is built, not by avoiding pain, but by proving to yourself that pain does not control you. And once you experience that, even briefly, something shifts inside you, because you stop seeing yourself as fragile and start seeing yourself as capable and capable. People do not need constant motivation. They rely on systems, routines, standards, and self-trust. And self-trust is built one kept promise at a time. And this is why consistency matters more than intensity, because intensity burns out. Consistency builds identity. And the inner war does not end in one day. It is fought daily, but it becomes easier as the new identity grows stronger and the old one loses influence. And eventually the things that once felt impossible become normal, and the things that once required effort become automatic. And this is the moment where momentum is born. And momentum changes everything, because when you see progress, even small progress, belief increases, and belief fuels action, and action reinforces identity, and the cycle begins to work in your favor. But you must survive this phase first, the phase where nothing feels certain, where progress feels invisible, and discipline feels heavy, because this is the forge, and the forge is not comfortable, but it is where strength is created. And if you stay, if you endure, if you refuse to quit on yourself, something powerful happens. You stop asking if you can do this and start knowing that you will, and that knowing does not come from words. It comes from experience. And once you have experienced yourself pushing through resistance, you are no longer the same person. And this is why this inner war is necessary, because without it, there is no transformation, only wishing and hoping and staying the same. And you did not wake up to stay the same. You woke up to become. And the war you are fighting right now is not against the world. It is against the part of you that wants to stay comfortable. And if you win this war, you win everything that comes after. There comes a moment in every real transformation where thinking ends and deciding begins. And that moment is not loud, it is not dramatic, it does not come with fireworks or applause, it comes quietly and firmly like a door closing behind you. And once it closes, you cannot walk back through it, because this is the moment you stop negotiating with yourself. And negotiations are what have been draining your energy for years, that internal debate where one part of you wants growth and the other wants comfort, and you keep going back and forth hoping for a compromise, but there is no compromise between who you were and who you are meant to become, because one must die for the other to live. And this is where most people hesitate, because identity death feels like loss. It feels like letting go of familiarity, routines, relationships, excuses, roles, stories you have told yourself about who you are and what you can handle. And even though those stories have kept you small, they feel safe because they are known, and the unknown always feels dangerous to the unprepared mind. But this is where you finally realize that staying the same is no longer safe either, that the pain of not changing has surpassed the pain of changing. And when that realization lands something inside you, hardens not in anger, not in bitterness, but in certainty. And certainty is powerful because certainty eliminates alternatives. And when there are no alternatives, action becomes inevitable. And this is the shift from trying to becoming, from hoping to committing, from wishing to deciding. And decision is not a thought, it is an identity declaration. It is saying, this is who I am now, and I will prove it with my actions. And once identity shifts, behavior follows naturally, because you no longer ask yourself if you should do the work. You do it because it is who you are. And this is why lasting change never comes from willpower alone. Willpower is temporary, identity is permanent. And the reason past attempts failed is because you tried to change behavior without changing identity. You tried to act confident while still seeing yourself as insecure. You tried to be disciplined while still identifying as inconsistent. You tried to be focused while still seeing yourself as distracted. And identity always wins, because behavior will always align with the strongest self-image you hold. And this is the moment where you consciously choose a new standard. Not someday, not when things calm down, not when you feel ready, but now, because readiness is a myth. Readiness comes after action, not before. And the decision you make here is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is about deciding that no matter how long it takes, no matter how uncomfortable it gets, no matter how many times you fall, you are not turning back. And when that decision is made, something changes in how you experience obstacles, because obstacles stop feeling like stop signs and start feeling like confirmation. Confirmation that you are on a path worth walking. Because easy paths do not require courage, and they do not create growth. And this is where you begin to burn the bridges to your old self, not by destroying your past, but by refusing to live in it anymore, by no longer using it as an excuse or a definition. And burning bridges does not mean abandoning people. It means abandoning permission. It means you stop giving yourself permission to be inconsistent, undisciplined, distracted, and half-committed. And you stop explaining yourself to people who only knew the old version of you, because explanations are another form of seeking approval. And approval seeking keeps you trapped in old identities. And growth often requires disappointing others so you do not disappoint yourself. And this is where loneliness may appear, because not everyone will understand your shift. Not everyone will support it. Some will question it. Some will mock it. Some will feel threatened by it, because your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation. And this is where emotional independence formed, where you stop needing validation to move forward and start trusting your own standards. And self-trust deepens when you do what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. And this is how confidence is built. Not from positive thinking, but from evidence that you can rely on yourself. And every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce the new identity. And every time you break one, you weaken it, so you become ruthless with your commitments, not because you are harsh, but because you respect yourself. And self-respect is the foundation of every powerful life. And this is where discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling like alignment, because you are no longer dragging yourself toward a future, you are stepping into it. And this identity shift changes how you see time, because time stops being something you waste and starts being something you invest. And you become protective of your energy, your focus, your environment, because you understand that who you surround yourself with, what you consume, what you tolerate, shapes who you become. And this awareness creates boundaries. And boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They let in what supports your future and block what pulls you back into the past. And this is where your internal language changes, the way you speak to yourself, the way you frame challenges, the way you interpret setbacks, because setbacks no longer mean failure, they mean feedback. And feedback is useful. It tells you where to adjust, not where to quit. And this mindset creates resilience, because you stop personalizing difficulty and start using it. And the identity you are stepping into is not fearless. It is courageous. Courage does not mean you do not feel fear. It means fear no longer decides. And this is the defining trait of people who succeed long term. They feel the same doubts, the same fatigue, the same uncertainty as everyone else. They just do not let those feelings dictate their actions. And this is where your decision solidifies into a code, a personal code of conduct that says, this is how I show up, regardless of mood, circumstance, or opinion. And once that code is written in action, not words, You become dangerous to your old limits because limits thrive on indecision. And once indecision is gone, momentum begins to build, and momentum rewards commitment. It amplifies effort. It turns consistency into progress, and progress into belief, and belief into identity, and identity into destiny. And this is where you realize that the decision you made was not just about changing your habits. It was about reclaiming ownership of your life. And ownership is the highest form of freedom, because when you own your choices, you own your outcomes. And this is the moment you stop waiting for permission from the world and give it to yourself. And that permission changes everything, because from this point forward, you are no longer becoming by accident. You're becoming by design, and the path ahead will still demand effort, sacrifice, and resilience. But you will walk it differently, because you are no longer asking if you can handle it. You know you can, because you have already crossed the hardest line. The line between who you were and who you chose to become